Hey, my name is Ben. Thanks for stopping by. In this video, we are talking about ice dams, and check this out. We are up on top of my roof, unfortunately. We have never had to deal with an ice dam that actually caused a leak before, but today we are dealing with it because it's been dripping into the kids' bedroom a few different days, and it's one of those things where you're like, okay, I hope it's gonna stop dripping like soon, because if it doesn't, we're gonna have to do something, and we're finally doing something because it is not fixing itself. Do you guys know what an ice dam is? It's that thing right up there. See it? So an ice dam, for those of you who don't know, is basically when you have some heat loss through the roof, and then the water runs down the roof and then hits a spot where the roof is colder. It then freezes and eventually accumulates what we call an ice dam. Now, on the eave of the roof right here, there's no heat loss coming up through that because it's outside of the thermal envelope. And we'll talk a little bit more about why I have some heat loss through the roof in just a few minutes when we go back inside. Thanks for being out here, kids. Yeah, high five. But yeah, this is what an ice dam looks like. This is really just kind of crazy. This top portion right here is pretty much level, flat right across here. So as the water runs down and runs out, it freezes out on this outer edge, and then it creates a pool of water back in here, and then that sits up against the roof, and eventually the water makes its way through. It's not because the roof actually has a leak in it or anything, it's just that when you have water statically sitting on top of your roof, it's gonna make its way through eventually when you have a shingle type product. If you had a steel roof, you probably wouldn't deal with this as much because it probably would just slide off and be less likely to leak. But we've got shingles, so this is what we're dealing with. So now we have to remove this ice dam in order to stop the leak inside the house. And the best way to do that is with hot water. Hot water is the best option for several different reasons, but the main one is that it carries a lot of energy with it and is able to quickly melt away the ice dam. Now by quickly, I mean it's still going to take you a good while, and you might have to wait for your water heater to recharge, unless you have a tankless water heater, in which case you won't have to do that. You can just melt the ice dam till it's gone. So these are the valves that control my outdoor spigots. You can see I've got hard, hot, and soft, and the hot one is what's turned on right now. That'll give us hot water outside to work with in order to deal with this issue. Let me see if I can set this here for a minute. So even though the water is pretty hot up here, by the time it makes it down, it's actually surprisingly cold down here. So in order to avoid this situation in the future, there would be a couple of options depending on how your house was built. The first option would be to add better insulation and make it so you have less heat loss going through the roof. By doing that, it's just going to allow all the snow and ice to just stay frozen, and there not be any temperature difference between the main part of the roof and the eaves. That's definitely the best way to go, but unfortunately that won't work for my situation, which you'll see in a minute when I take you inside. The second option, if you're in a situation like mine, is that you're going to have to add some sort of heaters in the areas where you're encountering ice dams. And we'll do this in the summertime when we don't have freezing, slippery temperatures to deal with. Basically, it's some electric webbing that goes across the face of the roof right here, and we'll only turn it on selectively when ice dam conditions are occurring.
Dad?
Yeah?
Would you like gloves? I can go inside and get you gloves.
Gloves? You think I need gloves? Yeah, my hands are getting kind of cold. But I'll tell you what. Well, I guess the water's still pretty hot. I was kind of thinking we'd almost ran out of water by now. We have 100 gallons of tank type hot water that we'll be going through here. Now, one common way to prevent ice dams in the first place is going to be to actually just rake the snow off of the roof using a snow rake. It's basically like a bunch of extensions and a big aluminum rake that you use to pull the snow off of the roof. If there's no snow on the roof, you can't have ice dams accumulate because there's no snow to melt and then run down the surface and accumulate. So that's definitely a good option. Unfortunately, in situations like this where it's really way up there, like on that side we can go up and stand on the roof again to pull the snow off, but over there it's just too far up to reach. But if we were able to remove the snow, which I might still work towards doing that, that will prevent ice dams in the first place. But unfortunately, that's a pretty labor-intensive way to go about it. That's why I think putting heat cables is probably what I'm going to lean towards, especially since I don't have gutters, which is on purpose. Without gutters, it makes it a little bit easier. With the heat cable, if you do have gutters, you have to like run the cable back and down through all the gutters and all that too. But in my case, I just have a couple sections that seem to be the problem areas, so it shouldn't be too hard to add heat cables if we want to. It's like 18 degrees out right now, Fahrenheit. But we're making good progress on this. This is taking longer than I want it to, but not as long as it could. Yeah, it's really frozen onto the roof. It's crazy. Okay, I'm gonna put them on in a minute here. Another thing that can sometimes affect whether or not you deal with water actually leaking through is water and ice shield or similar products. Basically, it's like a heavier duty rubber kind of roofing material that you put down like on the first, I don't know, 4 feet or something of the edge of the roof. And that's to help it just be more waterproof, to be more resilient to ice damming. Like even if you do have ice damming, hopefully it won't leak, sort of a thing. But that by itself won't fix it. If you have a really bad ice dam, the water's gonna make its way in one way or the other, most likely. You want a video for a minute?
Let's see my sister again. Say hi.
As I continued melting the ice dam, I found that it actually worked really well to run the hot water directly onto the shingles, and then that ran down and melted the ice where the ice dam was connecting to the roof. That allowed me to just melt underneath the ice dam instead of having to melt the entire thing, so then I could just remove large chunks of ice and discard them. There's a big chunk of ice dam. So here in the house, you can see we have this 12-12 pitch roof, and the reason we can't add any more insulation in order to stop the possibility of ice dams occurring is that we have a 2x4 cavity that's all the space we had to put insulation into. And so what that is this has all been spray foamed all the way up to the very top. So we have as much insulation as possible, but we can't get anything more than what's already there. So we're naturally going to have a little bit of heat loss going through that 2x4 cavity up to the roof decking, and most years it really hasn't been an issue. The weather conditions this year have made it a little bit more likely that ice dams are going to occur, mostly because we've had some warmer temperatures where it's allowed more to melt off of the roof, but it doesn't get quite warm enough to melt the entire roof. It just melts the spots where we have a little bit of heat loss, runs down and accumulates in an ice dam like we just saw outside. As you can see in this graphic, modern construction typically uses a method where you have a well-insulated attic with a vented roof system that allows air to come in through the soffits and then up through a ridge vent, and that keeps your roof system at the same temperature as the outdoor ambient environment. And when you do have the roof melt off, the entire roof will melt off at the exact same rate, meaning that you won't have any spots where ice will accumulate. So we're gonna have breakfast really quick while the water heater catches up. You can see we've got our tank type water heater right there. It's 105 gallons, so we're gonna shut that off right now to the outside so that it can catch up a little bit. I might let the hard water keep running. The hard water will also help melt it, even though it's 50 degrees instead of hot. Another thing that people sometimes do is putting these salt tablets up on the roof, and I'll link them down below just for fun so you see what I'm talking about. But the salt tablets will basically melt holes down through the ice dam, and they can help, but personally I do not think it's the best method to go with. Actually, removing the ice dam is by far the best, and like you saw, using just hot water out of a garden hose is a great way to do that if you're going to do it yourself. Now, if you're going to hire it done professionally, make sure whoever is doing it is actually using high pressure steam and not using a pressure washer. If you use a pressure washer with hot water, it can severely damage the roof. So you want to have them steamed off if you're going to have it professionally done. So the dripping inside of the house here has pretty much stopped. There's a little bit still happening. Hopefully we don't have too many permanent damage issues from the water leaking in, but it is what it is. Houses get old, things go bad. So now that we ran it out of hot water, we're just using cold water. It's working, it's just a little bit slower at melting it. You can see this piece is about to come loose. We just have a little bit more in the middle section. If I didn't have this handy dandy light fixture over here, it'd be a lot harder to make this work. So you can see right in here is where we have to let it finish melting. This does not come loose at all until it's fully melted off the roof. If you try to top it off too soon, I actually ripped a tiny bit of this shingle, not very much, but it really needs to be fully melted before you try to remove it. Now you'll definitely want to avoid using a hammer or any really physical means of chipping away at the ice. You'll end up just doing more damage to the roof than you will do good. Other methods that come to mind for melting an ice dam would be like a heat gun or a torch or things like that, but those really just don't work very efficiently. It takes a lot of energy to actually melt the ice. And believe me, I've spent a lot of time melting ice dams, but not specifically on roofs. I've spent more time melting ice dams in commercial walk-in freezers, where if you have an issue with the drain, you basically end up with a massive amount of ice that accumulates, and we've tried every method of removing the ice, and almost every time we come back to using hot water. There she went. All right, the ice dams are gone. All right. Hopefully this video was at least a little bit informative for you. If so, smash that like button, subscribe down below for more videos like this one, and I'll put a couple other interesting, hopefully non-ice dam related videos here on the screen for you to choose from. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll talk to you in the next one. See ya.
Dad, is this an ice dam?
Yeah, that's an ice dam right there on the doghouse. Oh no, the puppies are gonna get wet. I mean, the dogs are gonna get wet.
And the cat!
And the cats, yes. But actually they won't, because see this roofing material right here, this is like a continuous metal surface. So there's no spots for it to leak through. So they'll be fine. Delicious.